The U.S. has carried out 3 drone strikes against al-Shabab and ISIL extremists in Somalia. According to a state spokesman, the airstrikes were carried out in coordination with the Somali government. Several militants were killed in the latest operation. Toby Muse has more.
The U.S. says it has carried out 3 drone strikes in Somalia against the radical Islamic groups of al-Shabab and ISIL. The unmanned drone strikes, which killed several fighters, were organized in coordination with the Somali government. A U.S. spokeswoman told the Associated Press that they didn't think any civilians were injured in the drone strikes. One of the strikes occurred on al-Shabab after the group attacked a convoy of U.S. and Somalian forces. The U.S. has carried out 26 drone strikes against extremist targets in Somalia this year. The U.S. is working closely with the Somalian government in its battle against both al-Shabaab and ISIL. Al-Shabaab has been blamed for a devastating truck bomb in Somalia's capital, Mogadishu, that killed more than 350 people last month. It is the worst such atrocity in Somalia's history. One of the drone strikes hit ISIL targets in the region of Puntland in northern Somalia. As ISIL has lost ground in Iraq and Syria, ISIL's presence is worrying U.S. planners, and they have stepped up their operations against the group. The U.S. has doubled the number of military and counter-terrorism advisors in Somalia. At the same time, President Donald Trump has freed up restrictions on U.S. military actions in the country. Somalia is also being backed up by 22,000 African Union forces. But these forces are being gradually pulled out over the next 3 years, leading many to wonder if the US and Somalia alone can push back these extremist forces. Toby Muse, CGTN, Washington.
Well, let's get to the latest now on the ground from Mogadishu. CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo is standing by for us. Abdulaziz, just to begin with, what more do we know at this stage about these latest airstrikes, and just how are they being viewed by authorities in Somalia and the general public?
Well, Lindy, we've lately seen a sharp increase in drone strikes here in Somalia since the president of the U.S., Donald Trump, took office in January. We have seen a sharp increase in targeted killings of top militants here in Somalia over the past couple of months here, and since the election of President Farmaajo also in February. Now, the latest, according to the U.S. Africa Command, in conjunction with the Somali Special Forces here and the federal government, they're saying that a series of drone strikes took place in the country, notably 3 over the past 48 hours. Now, the latest one took place in a region known as Gedud, that is southwest of the country. There's quite a number of militants who were killed in that strike, but the U.S. and the AFRICOM branch of the U.S. as well as the federal government here, they have not said who was the exact target of that strike, whether they were just ordinary fighters or whether they were top militant commanders. So we are still waiting for that verification from authorities. But as my colleague in Washington has said, that the U.S. has increased its strike here, not just on al-Shabaab but also on ISIL. Now, over the past couple of months, ISIL has been operating in Puntland in the northeastern region of the country, but the security forces here didn't see ISIL as a growing threat until the first strike earlier this week here in Puntland, in a place known as Khandala, and that brought to light that ISIL is indeed a potent threat here. And looking at the setbacks that ISIL has received in Iraq and Syria, definitely experts here and the US, they don't want to see a resurgence of ISIL activities here in the country, Lindy.
Well, as you say, this escalation that we're seeing so far coming from the U.S., but we know, of course, that Somali forces themselves and the African Union mission in the country are also looking at escalating their response to al-Shabaab. What's the latest on that front?
Well, Lindy, according to President Farmaajo here in Somalia, the offensive has already started, and we can note the military build-up of AMISOM forces and Somali government troops, especially in areas surrounding Mogadishu. These are 2 regions, Lower Shabelle, that has been considered for years as the epicenter of the conflict here in Somalia, as well as towards Middle Shabelle on the other side of the city. Now, the African Union forces are waging that offensive on the Lower Shabelle side, and the government troops here have actually managed to seize small villages on the way in the Middle al-Shabab region, even though they've received a stiff resistance from al-Shabaab in those regions. But the government here is meeting the international partners, the ambassadors from the AMISOM troop contributing countries, so that they can strategize on a security mechanism. One, they say that will include the public in the fight against al-Shabaab, but it has received a major setback with a recent announcement by AMISOM that it's indeed withdrawing 1,000 of its troops. So this has worried the U.S. that remains Somalia's international partner in the security area. 80 al-Shabaab militants are the latest casualties in a special operation in a rich agricultural area known as Jilib, south of the capital. The militants control the area, and the Ministry of Information says they were planning a large-scale attack along the Kenya-Somalia border. Thousands of Ethiopian troops have recently crossed into the border ahead of a major offensive following recent attacks. But there are fears these could be compromised by a planned withdrawal by AMISOM troops next month. But the United States has expressed its reservation about the withdrawal of AMISOM troops, and it's all about timing. Washington is the biggest donor for the African Union force and fears that such a move could compromise security here in the Horn of Africa. The United States points to the October 14th attack that killed more than 300 people in downtown area of Mogadishu. Addressing Somalia's international partners in a high-level security meeting, Prime Minister Hassan Ali Khayre warned that the battle against al-Shabaab requires more than just a coordinated military assault.
We remain aware that maintaining security is not just about offensive action. We remain cognizant that we require a comprehensive approach. This has been well articulated by our President, who is keen on engaging our population on good governance, fighting corruption, reconciliation, and healing the wounds of the past.
In the capital, young people have rallied behind the government, denouncing the terrorist group atrocities. A similar campaign has been launched on social media sites to encourage security forces in their fight against the militant group.
Above all, I hope that we will have, all of us, common and united purpose to undertake the only important task ahead of us in the coming weeks and months: how to defeat Shabab and bring about peace and stability in Somalia.
Ranked as the most lethal terrorist group in Africa, the group's recent attacks against high-profile targets has raised serious concerns among Somalia's international security partners. In October, the U.S. issued a warning to its non-essential staff to vacate its mission based at the heavily fortified airport compound. For now, experts say Somalia still needs all the help it can get from the international community before its army can take over. Abdulaziz Bilo, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.